All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to OneClass. My name is Kevin, and today I'm going to be teaching some economics. A little bit of a background about me. I hold both a bachelor's and a master's degree in economics. I also work as an economist. What I'm going to be doing today is going through some questions that you guys have asked. Our junior tutors have answered them. I'm going to add anything that I think is relevant, and basically anything else that I think would be helpful. We can get started here. I'm only streaming till 1 o'clock, so just half an hour today. We've only got 5 or 6 questions lined up, but I'm sure I'll be back on tomorrow or sometime this week if I didn't get to the question you asked. So it gets working here. First question, what does it mean for a variable to be procyclical and lagging versus countercyclical and leading? Which, if any, of these two variables would you look at today to see if real GDP will be above trend in the near future? So we've got procyclical. And we've got countercyclical. And our junior tier have said that a procyclical or a procyclic indicator is one that moves in the same direction as that of the economy. That's the key takeaway here, that it moves in the same direction. Examples of this are things like GDP. They said the variable will have an increasing value if the economy booms, and during times of recession or any downturn, the value of the variable will start decreasing. So GDP is an economic indicator that can be cited as an example of a procyclical economic variable. Excellent answer by your junior tutor. A lagging indicator is a lagging economic indicator is one that does not move forward until a few quarters after the economy has changed. As the name indicates, the improvement will be lagging or slow. So often when something happens in the economy, the effects aren't felt right away, but typically further down the line, either like a couple quarters later or whatnot. It is for this reason that a lot of economic models include lagged variables. So they'll not only include, say, they're using GDP as a variable, they won't only use the current period GDP, they'll also use maybe sometimes the period before, sometimes several periods before, to help account for any lags from the indicators. Countercyclical, on the other hand, is a variable that moves in the opposite direction as that of the economy. So an example of this could be like the unemployment rate, for example. Like if the economy's in a boom, probably more people are working, there are more jobs. The unemployment goes low, whereas when the economy contracts, gets smaller, we will see unemployment rise because there are less jobs. A variable that moves in the opposite direction as that of the economy is called a procyclical economic indicator. I think they meant countercyclical there. For example, as the economy is getting worse or poorer, the unemployment rate is increasing or increasing. Good example, the unemployment rate, that's bang on. Basically during booms, the economy does well, unemployment rate falls. During busts, the economy is suffering, the unemployment rate goes up, less people have jobs. Lead indicator are indicators or variables that change even before the economy changes. Stock markets are classic examples of yield indicators. They tend to rise before the economic boom and decline before the economy crashes. Another example of this is an inverted yield curve, which will often come before recession. People tend to freak out a lot when there's an inverted yield curve. And there has never been, let me make sure I say this right, there's never been a recession without an inverted yield curve happening first, but not every inverted yield curve leads to a recession. And I said that right, yes, I think. So if a variable is procyclical and lagging, it means that the variable is moving in the direction of an economy with indicators progressing slowly. So if I were to draw if the economy is moving like this, it might be that because it's lagging, as time increases, should make this dotted or something. This is time. It happens later on in time. It begins to follow the pattern of the economy. Whereas if it's countercyclical, and we've got some kind of boom, then a bust, another boom. Instead, so what did we say? Countercyclical and leading. So it would be instead something like this. So I'm going to say, excellent answer, that's correct. And we can move forward to the next question. Question is, what impact does unemployment have on our economy? Compare the country's unemployment rate last year at this time to the nation's current unemployment rate. Is there a significant difference? Why or why not? And please provide at least one reference for each question. Our junior tutor looks like they give quite the in-depth answer here, which is good. In this case, I'll probably just read the question read the answer and add in anything else that I think may be relevant. Unemployment financial costs. The government and the nation suffer because of unemployment. In many countries, the government has to pay some benefits to the unemployed. The greater the number of the unemployed, or the longer they are without work, the more money the government has to shell out. Government expenditure on transfer payments increase, which does not lead to the creation of goods and services in the economy. So in Canada, we can think of EI, employment insurance, is given to those that are laid off. More recently, in the light of the pandemic, there was the CERB, Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or probably what applies to this audience more, the CESB, the Canada Emergency Student Benefit. The CERB was like 2K. CSB was 12 or 1.1250, I think. And I truthfully don't know off the top of my head what regular employment insurance payments are. Spending power. The spending power of an unemployed person and his or her family decreases drastically, and they would rather save than spend their money, which in turn affects the economy adversely by reducing the aggregate demand in the economy. Reduced spending power of the employed. Increased taxes due to increased government expenditure and the insecurity about their own work may affect the spending power of the working people as well, and they too may start to spend less than before, thus affecting the economy by reducing aggregate demand. So when unemployment spikes, A, a lot of people lose their jobs, but B, a lot of other people are scared of losing their jobs. As a result, they might increase their savings rate and spend less to give themselves a bigger cushion if they were to lose their job. So the net effect on the economy as a whole is that consumption decreases. Recession. With the increasing rates of unemployment, other economic factors are significantly affected, such as the income per person, health costs, quality of healthcare, standard of living, and poverty. All of these affect not only the economy, but the systems as a whole and society as a whole. Here are some aspects of the impacts of unemployment on our society. Unemployment affects not just the person, him or herself, but also his or her family, and in the long run, the society where he lives. Unemployment brings despair, unhappiness, and anguish. It forces people to live their lives in a way they do not wish to. standard of living is negatively affected. It is the ease with which people living in a time and place are able to satisfy their needs or wants, and here are the main aspects. I believe they're speaking main aspects of unemployment and the effect that it has on people. So one of them is mental health. Mental health problems like low self-confidence, feeling unworthy, depression, and hopelessness are consistent with unemployment. With lost income and frustration, recent unemployed people may develop negative attitudes towards common things in life and may feel that all sense of purpose is lost. Frequent emotions could be low self-esteem, inadequateness, and feeling dejected and hopeless. Health diseases, those that are employed as a whole can see a dramatic increase in the general health problems of individuals. Tension at home, quarrels and arguments at the home front, which may lead to tension and increased numbers of divorces, things of that nature. Political issues, loss of trust in the administration and the government, which may lead to political instability. Tension over taxes rise, so if there's a lot of people unemployed, as a result, the government needs to pay more in employment insurance, or more recently, CERB and CESB. In order to pay for it, it is often that they will raise taxes, sometimes just in certain sectors or on certain products, but sometimes as a whole as well. Unemployment also brings up discontent and frustration among the tax-paying citizens. In order to meet the demands of the unemployment fund, the government may often have to increase taxes, giving way to restlessness among tax-paying citizens. Insecurity among employees, the prevalence of unemployment, and the plight of unemployed people and their families may create fear and insecurity, even among the people currently employed. As I mentioned earlier, these people tend to start increasing their savings rate and consuming less. It may lead to an increase in crime, may lead to an increase in suicide. Social outings, unemployment can lead to a decline in social outings and interactions with other people, including friends. And stigma, unemployment brings more than just no work. It also brings with it shame that the person has to bear. Nobody likes to be called unemployed. They list a couple references there. At the beginning of this, they did a very good job of covering the economic implications of unemployment, which is decreases in spending power. If the unemployment rate in a nation spikes, it often leads to a recession. Those that still have jobs spend less, and I think they also did a very good job of going over the kind of general and in somewhat non-economic implications of unemployment. And I think they did an awesome job answering the question. So I will say explain in your own words what a business cycle is. Also, name and explain briefly the main features of business cycles that we observe. So a business cycle is the fluctuation of the GDP of an economy around its long-term growth rate. It's also known as an economic cycle. Business cycles usually have peaks and troughs. They represent the different phases of the business cycle. And a business cycle has 4 phases, namely boom, recession, depression, and recovery. I can draw that for us here quickly. So we've got time on the x-axis, and we could say GDP on the y-axis, and say over time, GDP was strong, fell sharply, and is now beginning to rebound, right? So, loosely, like we can say, like, this is when COVID hit. Again, this is not going to be perfect. If anything, this probably should have been a slower, steeper incline, but generally this is what happened, right? So business is booming for the last several years. So say here to here, probably more so till there. We've got business booming. It falls. So we've got a recession here. And after the initial spike in unemployment and whatnot, our economy begins to recover. And we've got recovery. What's not listed here is a depression. And depression is essentially a long-term recession. So you've probably heard of the Great Depression, 1929. I believe that was over the course of like 2 or 3 years. The financial crisis also happened in 2008. That was like a year and a half. It's unclear the exact long-term effects of COVID on the economy right now. And I guess we'll see how it plays out moving forward. A boom is a period of high economic growth, GDP, and employment. The economy is at its peak at this point. When the economy begins to move in a recession, demand and output fall, and the unemployment rates begin to rise. This is what we saw when COVID hit. The economy is starting to fall from its peak and is on the downward slope of the business cycle. Then the economy reaches a depression that is a severe form of recession. At this point, the economy is at its trough of the business cycle. I think it's important to say that this trough here does not necessarily mean a depression. A depression happens over a longer period of time. This is a trough, and obviously at the top of a boom, you're also going to have a peak. After depression comes the recovery period during which demand picks up, giving way to increased output and growth. That's here, the recovery. Economy starting to ascend. The business cycle is on a positive slope at this point. It's important to note the type of unemployment that is associated with changes in the business cycle, and this is cyclical unemployment. So cyclical unemployment comes from changes in the business cycle. So when the economy is booming, there's going to be lower levels of unemployment, obviously, and when there's a recession, unemployment is going to spike. Other types of unemployment are seasonal. So that's like, think of a plow driver. They've got a job in the winter when it's snowing, but when summer comes around, you're not needed as a plow driver. Some like crop industries and things of that nature are also seasonal unemployment. There's structural unemployment, where the company's looking for jobs. There's a demographic mismatch from the people applying for them. So think some like startup tech company. We need a ton of coding skills, and say there's like somebody that's 60 that worked in agriculture that's just been recently laid off. They're looking for a job. This employer is looking to hire someone, but there isn't a skills match. That's structural, sorry. And the last one is, what am I missing? Frictional. So that's when, like, say you graduate university and you haven't found a job yet, you're frictionally unemployed. Or say you move to a new city and you haven't found a job yet, you're frictionally unemployed. This is basically between jobs. That's what frictional unemployment is. That was a little off track, but that was a good answer by our junior tutor. Four, describe briefly what total factor productivity means and provide an example of a change in total factor productivity. Total factor productivity, also known as multi-factor productivity, is a variable that accounts for effects on total output not caused by traditionally measured inputs of labor and capital. And labor and capital are essentially the two common inputs in every single objective function you'll work on. So to get some kind of output, you're going to have an input of labor. That's jobs, wages, things of that nature, and capital. It's like infrastructure and things of that nature. So if you've got a warehouse and you've got employees working at that warehouse to ship out items for people to get on Christmas, that's an example of the two inputs leading to an output. is a measure of the efficiency of all inputs to the production process and is mainly the result of technological innovations or improvements. According to Diego Coleman, total factor productivity is a portion of output that is not explained by the amount of inputs used in production. As such, its levels is determined by how efficiently and intensively outputs are used in production. So it's sort of a catch-all. Sort of a catch-all for what doesn't fall under labor and capital. L denotes labor and K typically denotes capital. So it's a catch-all for things that don't fall under labor and capital, and it's also roughly equal to the technology, because that's the majority of what doesn't fall under labor and capital, but it's, I say roughly, because it's not exactly equal to technology. There are other factors that affect total factor productivity, although I can't think of an example off the top of my head, so you'll have to take my word for it. Just read TFP, total factor productivity. Example, the technological change that introduces new products is difficult to see as a shift in the production function. The new product has simply a new production function. When they were first introduced, there weren't any goods comparable to computers, microwave ovens, and cellular telephones. When these new goods were introduced, they had their own new production function. Yeah, so it's technically loosely related to new tech innovations that lead to a new product. I'm trying to think of something more recent. Nothing's exactly coming to my head. Maybe when the first smartwatches came out. Nobody owned anything truly similar to that. So. Or when Google Home / Big Brother 2.0 first came out. It's another good example. Question 5. It's a very small number 5. I think this is my last question. I might have one more. The so-called quantity theory of money suggests that the amount of money in circulation is the primary determinant of the price level in the economy, that the growth rate of the money supply is the primary determinant of the inflation rate. Write a short essay evaluating the logic of these arguments. So our junior tutor, so the quantity theory of money states that there is a direct and positive relationship between the quantity of money and the price level. The logic behind this is to suppose that money is like a commodity. As the supply of a commodity increases, its marginal value in money terms decreases. In relation to money, it can be stated that more of it is required to buy the same amount of goods and services when its supply increases. Thus, as the supply of money increases, the price level increases to compensate for the fall in the marginal value of money. Likewise, inflation refers to the rate of increase in the price level. Thus, as the price level continues to rise due to the increased money supply, inflation also increases. And that is definitely a good write-up. Small distinction probably that should be made. Typically, when we draw for the market for a good, so they say this is like apartments in New York City. It's going to be a supply sloping upward and demand sloping downwards for these apartments. There's going to be some equilibrium price and quantity. So Q star, equilibrium quantity, and P star, the equilibrium price or market clearing price. So when the price is very high, there is pretty much no quantity demanded, but say price becomes low and all of a sudden you can get a condo in New York for cheap, which definitely happens all the time. There's going to be a very high demand for these condos. With the money market graph, we draw it slightly different. On the x-axis, we've got the quantity of money, So Q, just like with a commodity. And here on the y-axis, we've got expected inflation. And of course, this refers to rates of the price level. We've got money demand sloping downwards when there's a lot more money in circulation. Demand for it is less. But the difference is that supply slopes perfectly upwards, the money supply. And the point where they meet, you're going to have the equilibrium quantity of money, or maybe just the current, actually I should just call that the money supply. The point where they meet, it's going to be the current supply of money. And this is going to be the expected inflation. I think you denote this pi e. I kind of feel like there's an I in there, but I can't remember why off the top of my head, so we're going to run with pi e. This is actually a policy tool that governments frequently use. So say we're trying to pull us out of a recession, we may increase the money supply. Call it money supply prime. And as a result, you can see what happens over here with the inflation rate. So I don't think I have anything else to add to this answer by our junior tutor. I feel like there was something I wanted to touch on here. Give me a second. It's gone, whatever it is. Is correct. All right, so that is all I have for today. Thank you for watching. I always forget what I'm supposed to say at the end of these videos. That's all I have for today. Thank you for watching. If you got any of your own questions, there should be a link below this video. You can click it, send in whatever question you want. Pretty much anything from high school, college, university. Me and our other senior tutor, Ose, should be able to answer. You can also like and share this video with your friends if you found it informative. Yeah, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. This has been Kevin from OneClass. We'll talk to you soon.